Howard Carter in the year 1922 led a team of some of the most experienced Egyptologists into the land of the pharaohs to discover what eventually ushered in a new era for Egyptology. He and his team discovered and opened the tomb of King Tutankhamun, a finding that would determine the direction of future studies on Egyptian history. However, little did they know that this finding would have grave consequences for several troop members. You're watching Historical Saga, and today we'll discuss the Curse of Tutankhamun. But before that, we want you to smash the like button and ensure you're subscribed to the channel. The first indications of an underlying curse began after the experience of James Henry Breasted, who used to work with Carter. He had revealed that soon after the opening of the tomb of Tutankhamun, Carter had sent an Egyptian messenger on an inconsequential errand to his house. As the messenger approached his home, he was startled by a faint, almost human cry. Carter had a pet canary that used to be kept in a birdcage at his house. However, on the day of the tomb's opening, the cage had two occupants, the canary and a cobra that was on the verge of gulping down the bird. Cobra was the ancient symbol of Egyptian monarchy, and for many locals it became the reason to spread rumors of an alleged curse haunting the tomb. Lord Carnarvon, who had worked with Carter in his Egyptian expedition, had a secretary named Richard Bethel. 7 years after the tomb's opening, Richard was found dead in London. In 1929, he died in a London club and his death remained shrouded in mystery. Eventually, it was attributed to suicide. This death was of a monumentous significance as this shocking demise is believed to have resulted in the beginning of the infamous Curse of Tutankhamun. Actually, it was his father who had mentioned this curse in the first place soon after he got to know of his son's demise. Reports point to him being stunned at the morbid news and mumbling about the curse of the mummy. A few weeks later, the old man was no more. He had thrown himself from the window of a high-rise apartment and died from the fall. This was unfortunately the beginning of a sad chain of events that has come to be known as the Curse of the Mummy, something that has inspired multiple films and gave birth to the Mummy franchise. Within a span of 10 years, a total of 13 deaths were attributed to the curse, all of them belonging to the expedition that discovered the tomb in the first place. Even though the tragic deaths of Richard Bethel and his father made the concept of the curse infamous, this was not the first demise of a person hailing from the expedition. In fact, the first death occurred within a few weeks of the opening of the tomb, and the unfortunate victim was Lord Carnarvon, the master of Richard Bethel. He was the person who financed the expedition. The problem began when he was bitten by a mosquito. Yes, that is how the beginning of the end began for the Lord. The bite area had become inflamed, and later on, he had unknowingly slashed the bite while shaving. The second injury to a site already injured by a mosquito bite saw a gradual downward spiral to becoming badly infected. The infection could not be controlled and resulted in severe blood poisoning that eventually took the life of Lord Carnarvon only a few weeks after the successful opening of the tomb of Tutankhamun. A year later, in May 1923, the curse struck again. This time it was George J. Gould, an American railroad magnate and former party member of the Egyptian expedition. He was luckier than Lord Carnarvon as he managed to come out of Egypt alive. In fact, he died in the most beautiful of locations right in the middle of the French Riviera. Gould had contracted a fever after his visit to the tomb, and somehow this problem could not be treated even by the best doctors in the Western world. He would eventually go on to develop a bad case of pneumonia from which he never had any chance of recovery. Or perhaps he did have some chances after all but couldn't capitalize on them due to a weak immune system, or perhaps due to a reason more sinister than we could possibly imagine. Have you enjoyed the video so far? Then don't forget to press the like button to like this video. And please subscribe to our channel to keep getting news feeds about our latest releases. The year 1923 saw another attack of the same curse and yet another body bag lined up. After the death of Gould in May, barely 2 months later in July, another person died mysteriously. Another person who had a link to the Tutankhamun expedition. This person was an Egyptian playboy called Prince Ali Fahmy Bey. And his end was equally tragic and more bizarre than anything. He was shot dead by his wife while they were staying at the Savoy Hotel. What could have been the reason behind his wife killing him? Perhaps she found him cheating on her? But wasn't she aware of his playboy past in the first place? Well, there are obviously many questions that we cannot answer right now. The Carter expedition deep into the Egyptian past shrouded in mystery was not pulled off successfully due to the antics of one man working his brains off. The Carter Chronicles were written by multiple sources hailing from different nationalities. The account of the mummy of Tutankhamun that was lifted and carried from its resting place was co-written by Carter along with another prominent Egyptologist, Arthur C. Mace. Mace was stationed in Egypt and was working on the different aspects of Egyptian history and trying to understand more from the Tutankhamun's tomb when he was struck by an unseen blow. He had a horrifying physical breakdown within a year of the amazing discovery, and the extreme stress it put on his body compelled him to retire from Egyptology completely. The American probably had plans of returning back to his field after he got over this hardship, but unfortunately that never occurred. His body never really recovered from the trauma, and though he managed to survive, he eventually died in New York on April 6, 1928. This was the third major casualty in the Carter expedition, who passed away within a decade since the opening of the mummy's tomb. And the most intriguing part of it all? This was yet another death that happened due to mysterious circumstances and could not be explained with normal reasoning. Arthur Conan Doyle, in a particular volume of the famous detective series Sherlock Holmes, had attributed these unexplained deaths to the use of elements by ancient Egyptians. According to him, modern science was still too primitive to decode the existence and working technology of these elements. The stunning thing is that another death of a member of the Carter expedition team happened due to something that cannot be attributed to a mere change in weather. After the discovery of the tomb and the mummy, Howard Carter was helped by Sir Archibald Reed in the process of recording all the data. Sir Archibald was an expert in X-rays and prepared several detailed X-ray skiograms of the tomb that were sent for further studies and investigation. He also used his expertise and knowledge in the field to take photographs covering the different artifacts that had littered the floor of the tomb. However, his glory was incredibly short-lived. Less than 2 years after the covering of the interior of Tutankhamun's golden tomb, Sir Archibald passed away in January 1924. Now comes the most interesting part. His death was attributed to radiation poisoning, which happens when a human's body is subjected to an overload of radiation from different sources. This cause of death was incredibly important as the X-ray Sir Archibald used to dabble in had the ability to cause death due to poisoning as well. So, did Sir Archibald Reed dabble a bit too much in X-rays? Or perhaps, was there some sinister entity that had subjected his body to a radiation overload after he entered the tomb? We may never know the true answer to this question. There is a reason why the Curse of Tutankhamun has attracted so much attention. Just like something from a horror novel, the curse strikes out of nowhere and piles on yet another body. Imagine a mere accident becoming fatal. The Carter expedition had the help of another prominent Egyptologist of French descent, George Benedict. He was a member of the party that had inspected the tomb when the seal was first broken. However, after he left the tomb, George slipped and fell in a heap on the sand outside. It was but a simple fall, but the damage it caused somehow became life-threatening to the French Egyptologist. After suffering for 4 years, he finally passed away in 1926 to join the unfortunate group of people who died due to the curse. And on that note, this video comes to an end. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, how about you give us a thumbs up and also hit the subscribe button.